Our guest for this session is Sarah McDevitt, Global Director of Professional Services at HubSpot. She has led an astonishing career in media over the years, where she has held many leadership positions in companies such as Core and Radical. She co-founded a House charity in 2009, which offers people the chance to take part in short-term volunteering work in Kenya. She is a proud married LGBTQ mother of two and brings public awareness to issues facing parents within this community. Sarah, welcome to the Mindset Shift, and it's great to have you here for a chat this morning.
Great to be here, Tim.
Tell me a little bit about you. I'm very keen to find out, where you're from and what has brought you to this stage of your career.
I'm from, I would say, Sligo. We moved there when I was 2, so I like to consider myself a Sligo woman now, even though I kind of went to college at 18 and left Sligo. I would still consider myself from Sligo. Really, I suppose starting off in Sligo, I wasn't the most academic student in the world. Through transition year, decided that I wanted a career in radio. And I started reading the death notices down in Northwest Radio and getting my experience there. And I went on then to broadcasting college because the ambition was to become a radio broadcaster. So I got a degree in media production and management. And that was very much where I decided I wanted to spend my time. And I did work in radio a little bit, but to be completely transparent, I kind of early on realized it's a very tough business. It's somewhere that shelf life matters. And I realized probably when I was a bit younger that there wasn't a ton of money to be made in it. So I decided to stretch my wings a little bit beyond it.
And you said you moved to Sligo when you were 2. Where were you born before that, or where were you in before that?
Dublin. Yeah, we're from Dublin. My mother and father were both from Donegal, a guard and a nurse. They met in Dublin and they decided they wanted to come back and raise their family in the country.
So you're one of the few Dubs who claims to be from Sligo. You're actually from Dublin. That's interesting.
That's true. And
what was school like for you? In Sligo, I mean, it's the west of the country. What was school like for you then?
Tim, I wasn't the most academic person in the world. I struggled quite a lot with reading and writing. I would be a phonetic dyslexic, which means I struggle with the sound that creates the word. So I found that quite difficult in school. I found that academia wasn't a place that I really flourished. I remember in the junior cert, I got my results and they were all C's, and it was just C's the entire way down. And I remember my father saying to me, "Does the C stand for consistency?" And I was like, it does indeed. So I just didn't really flourish there, but I kind of knew I liked people, and I knew I liked connecting with people. I knew I liked communicating with people in a verbal sense. I knew I liked motivating people in school. That was kind of something I kind of knew naturally that I was good at. And I did have very supportive teachers who kind of were like, "Oh, if you could write like you talk." But back then, I guess things were slightly different. There wasn't as much supports. And my parents would have come from farming backgrounds, both of them. They both came from farming families. And it was very much the idea of roll up your sleeves, get stuck in, do something. It doesn't all have to be based on books. Or education. My parents were always supportive. They were always like, "You have brains to burn. You just need to apply yourself to something." And so when I went on to the Leaving Cert, I did actually business in the Leaving Cert, and I was quite good at that in terms of understanding the concepts of business and the acronym behind it. So I suppose that was kind of that combination of media and business is something that kind of set me on the path that I eventually ended up on.
And tell me about the media career. I'm fascinated about that. I mean, first of all, reading the death notices in Northwest, but it was a passion of yours, obviously, at that point in time.
Yeah, well, it was actually radio documentary making that was the real passion, because I think, again, not being a reader, I had a particular love of the spoken word. And so I used to love listening to radio documentaries in the car and kind of getting lost in them. And the stories that they could tell, the kind of rich pictures they could paint without images. It was always something that I really, really enjoyed and I loved. And actually in secondary school, that was kind of where it started. We got the opportunity to do the first FM radio broadcast from a secondary school as a temporary license down in Mercy College in Sligo. And we were on nationwide at the time. Much was the newness of this. And I think I just got very excited about the kind of creativity and production behind radio. The course that I went for was based on your portfolio and an interview. So you didn't actually need that many points to get into it. And obviously that was very much aligned to where I felt I was kind of from an academic point of view.
It's interesting you talk about painting a picture, because radio really blossoms if you can paint pictures. And, as you go on in your career, obviously that skill is very important. And it's something that's underestimated, really, in my experience there in radio, the ability of the people on radio, particularly in documentaries, to paint a picture and to put you in the scene of what they're talking about or what they're expressing is a really, special talent.
Absolutely.
And tell me, so you decided because of economic reasons or because you didn't feel that the shelf life would last, or what was the real core of giving up your passion and going on to the other world, whatever the other world was at that point in time?
Well, there was probably like a few factors for me. I had joined the FCA, or the Reserve Army, when I was 17. And I was very passionate about that. I spent 13 years in it. I became a corporal in a signals unit. And through that, I think I just got a real sense of, managing people. It's slightly different because, obviously from an army perspective, there is that kind of like, you have to do it anyway in terms of like the ranks and the orders. But it really showed me the power of building multi-talented, diverse teams, and the things that you could achieve when you brought teams together. Because obviously when it's an interesting one to apply to the business world, but when you're out on a tactical exercise and you're understanding, someone's really good at map reading, someone's really good at understanding the strategy, someone's really good in terms of the weaponry. But you understand that actually you can't actually achieve that mission without having that diverse group of people. And then the second part of it is like just mentoring people and watching people develop. You would have people coming in to the FCA at 17 who had, in some cases, and many of them I still know today, they had attitude problems. They didn't take orders. They didn't want to, collaborate. They didn't want to work in teams. And to see them a couple of years later leaving, these incredible young people going on to join the Guards or join the Army or going on to college and doing other things and taking all of the skills they learned in the Reserve Army with them. I think I just started to understand at that point that I had a passion for kind of people, and that combination of like understanding that I really wanted to work with people and really wanted to develop them in the business world, I think is ultimately kind of what led me on that journey. Radio is a place that you can collaborate with people, but it is a lonely place sometimes from a broadcasting perspective, in that, sometimes you are yourself, documentary making as well. You can collaborate with some people, you're meeting a lot of people, but you can sometimes be a lonely place. And so I think I just really realized that I am really motivated, inspired, and I find my fuel from other people.
You mentioned the FCA, and I would have always seen the FCA and the Army, obviously, in particular, as command and control. That really, you send a command and they have to follow. It's not a place where I can say, well, no, sir, or no, ma'am, I'm not doing that, because obviously, in the pressure of a battle, that's not acceptable. But I was very interested by the fact that you still sought out people with certain skills, like strategic skills or map reading skills or weaponry skills you talked about. That's not really common, would be my perception of an army environment, or is my perception wrong?
I think your perception is probably wrong, because, certainly, even in my current role, we hire veterans, and the skills that they bring to the work environment are incredible, because they're multifaceted, T-shaped people who can bring lots of different things to the table. And I think like the Army is a place that actually does nurture people having those particular specialisms. I think the talent is understanding how those teams work together and come together. And yes, there will be people on the team who don't have particular strengths, but I think actually in that Army environment, what people are really good at is saying that's not my strong point. And I think that's something that it's more natural for it to happen in that environment. Actually, is people like, well, I'm in this particular area. This is my specialism. This is what I do well. And over time, people kind of know that. So people are allowed to, I think, own what they're good at and be okay at not being good at everything in the army. I think as well, like on the kind of taking orders thing, the thing I kind of love about the army, if I'm being honest, is that they present you with an order. And often that's like a problem you have to solve. And then you have to use the resources that are available to you to solve that problem. And so that, like, I think creates this forced creativity and forced kind of like thinking outside the box that you don't get when you have other options. So I think like the army really lets you to really expand in the skills that you have and work with what you have without going, well, this isn't good enough or I need other things. And sometimes in business, we can be a bit like, we can't achieve that without certain resources. Whereas in that situation, sometimes you don't have a choice. And I kind of love that about it. We really had to be Swiss Army knives, all of us, to solve problems.
What's fascinating is that you talk about the team and work in the army and the collaboration, and that some people's strengths were obviously in different areas than others. But that's what the success of a team is to take all the strengths of each individual, because we all have individual strengths, and it's the combination of having our individual strengths put together in the strength of a team is what makes successful teams, if we're in the right role. And that's one of the challenges in an army context. You could have somebody who is non-commissioned in an army sense, who will be a great officer, but the route for him or her is more restricted, because of the structure of that. But definitely the team collaboration is something that is very evident. And I really love the point about the creativity that we do in business sometimes say, well, we don't have enough resources, we can't do this. Where in the army, you have to get out with the Swiss knife. You've just got to get on with it in that sense,
Yeah.
Before we go on to talk about how you moved then from into your professional world, tell me about your personal world. What's going on in your personal world these days?
So I've been married for almost 5 years to my wife. We on the 17th of December, so I have to remember.
Happy anniversary in advance.
Thank you. So yeah, we have two boys. We're very lucky that we have two boys who are 3 and 18 months. So it's a busy house. And my wife works full time as well. So we really have to, I suppose, negotiate between the two of us to make sure that we're both, doing the things that fulfill us. But it is a very, very busy house for sure.
What are the boys' names?
They're Lachlan and Grayson. Okay.
And tell me, in the context of work-life balance, because your wife works full-time and you work full-time, how do you work that out? Because, it's a challenge in households where the two people in the partnership, in the marriage, work full-time. How do you work it out?
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, I think the pandemic has somewhat changed things for a lot of people, and it's definitely changed it for us. Before the pandemic, I used to drop the kids at 7:30. I was the person with the bags hanging out of me, sweating profusely already, having to drag the two of them to the creche. Since, the pandemic, we're able to just take a bit more time in the morning with them, and, walk to creche or whatever we want to do to just take the time, come back, get the laundry done, which is, important to get a few bits done around the house while they're not there. In terms of like the balance of like work, for both of us, we do work with, flexible companies, and we both would have worked from home before the pandemic. So that wasn't too much of an adjustment. But my team is majority based in the States, and a lot of the work that I do is based in the States. So what we tend to do is like, if we do have a situation where the kids are sick or something, I will look after the kids in the morning because I can kind of move things around because of the time difference. And then my wife will take the afternoon. That's kind of how we balance it. But I think like we're just incredibly supportive of each other's careers. So when we know that something takes priority, then we make time for that. And both companies allow us to take the time to bring the kids to the doctor or whatever it is. So there is that flexibility. And I think that has increased since the pandemic in a big way for us.
When did you make the transition then from the media world and into the people side of the world, where you're now flourishing? What was that road like for you?
So Tim, like all things in life, sometimes you have to always be aware of who's around you at different points in your life. So when I was in college, in the final year, we worked in a group to working towards our different dissertations and group projects. And when I left college, I did a few things. I was coaching basketball. I was working on the radio. I was organising concerts for charities around Ireland. I was kind of like in between getting my first full-time job. I was trying to gather as many of experiences as I could in different skill sets. Which was great. And then a person who had been a group with for college rang me one day and she said, my boss has asked me to recommend someone for a job. And, I remember you always showed up on time. You always delivered the work for your projects. I feel like you'd be pretty reliable to put forward. So I said to her, well, what's the role in? And she said, well, it's in creative advertising. And at the time I was like, oh no, I slept the whole way through that module in college. I don't think that's for me. And she said, no, I think you should go for it. So I ended up going for that, worked for a great man called Brian Wallace for about 3 years. And that was in creative advertising. So my role there was mixed between working with clients and working as a production manager. So doing like the 48 sheets and working those different things out. And that was a great experience. I mean, the mistakes I made there, I will never make in life again. Typos and just getting things not quite right. It only happened once, as in I learned from those experiences. But it was a tremendous experience to work with those customers. And then kind of through a stroke of luck, I guess, more than anything, I was offered a job in a media agency. Again, completely different. I had never bought media before. So I learned then how to buy television and radio and outdoor and press. I was doing that for about a year. And this thing called the internet took off. And at the time, my boss in the company was like, well, we need to probably invest in this thing, the internet. I think people will probably eventually want to buy ads on that. And this is very early on now, Tim, in the days of the internet. There was very few people doing it. I think there was one company buying for pretty much all the companies in Dublin at the time. So then I kind of went on a journey of learning. They sent me over to London for a few weeks to learn about digital media. And then I came back. I actually unbelievably read a lot of books. People always laugh at this, but the For Dummies books were the books that I read because they were very simple and they taught me how to do the job. And then I spent about nearly 5 years in that company, building that business up. So really going out, positioning what digital media was to customers, building that faith, building that understanding of what it was. And, that was a great 5 years, but I suppose I then reached a point where I was like, okay, I want to grow some more. And I was managing a team there again, training, like it was really at the point where you were doing a lot of education. It was a ton of education. No one knew, there wasn't really like specialists at that point. Okay. And I really enjoyed my time there, but then it became time to kind of move on. And again, I was very lucky. I got offered a role to set up a agency in Dublin that had been successful in England, and it was in APAC and different parts of South America. So they asked me to come and set up the company in Dublin. And that was another tremendous experience, Tim. Another good lesson in life of, I don't think I'd ever be an entrepreneur, because for that time I had to find the office. I had to worry about getting the bin tags. I had to worry about the revenue was coming in and the business was going out. I was pitching for new business all the time. It was just an incredible experience in kind of driving a business, pretty much by yourself. There was support there, obviously, but you were really responsible for bringing in those sales. And again, grew a team there. But after 18 months, I kind of said, I don't know if this is for me. Like this is something that is hard. It's very hard. And I always am so impressed by entrepreneurs and people who start their own businesses, because I think that experience taught me that's probably not for me. And then again, I was approached about a role in core media at the time, and to come in there and be the director of digital. So again, I was like, this sounds great. Core is a big company. It feels comfortable to me. There's lots of support. So I ended up going into Core as a digital director there. Again, buying just digital media. and ended up going into Radical in particular was the company that I was working on. And I was there probably like 18 months. And I was very lucky to get promoted to a director of the company. And I was very, very happily in Core and Radical for probably another 5 years. And then I looked for the next step, and Tim, that leads us to, I ended up in HubSpot because I said to myself, where can I go? And the team in Core were they're so supportive, and they're so understanding of people's wanting to grow and wanting to develop. And, Alan Cox in particular could not have been like more supportive when I told him about, this opportunity that I was taking in a global company. So that was really, for me, was reflecting on where do I want to be? What's the opportunities that I want to do? What's the experiences I want to have? And that's what, kind of led me to HubSpot.
What's interesting is your dad's message to you on the results of all this sees about the consistency was actually what your friend spotted when she called it reliability. It's interesting that stood out with somebody in a completely different way. Your dad was saying it to boost your confidence, obviously, but your friend actually saw your reliability and your consistency and started you on the journey. I'm very interested in your point about starting your own business, because many people take for granted that it's easy. I mean, starting your own business is not for everybody. And even though we all like to believe we have entrepreneurial spirit and we can, we have all that ability, it's not right for everyone. But to recognize it is a great strength. And the fact that you recognize after 18 months and you had built it at that stage for over that period of time, but it wasn't for you. What gave you that sort of clinicalness of thought at that point in time that this is not something I want to progress, Or was it an opportunity that came with Core? Did they overlap?
No, actually Core had come to me before and I'd said no to them because I was really like, I really want to give this a go. I think, Tim, it goes right back to school and sometimes struggling with learning. You become really comfortable with failure because you have that kind of like preconceived notion of failure because you feel at that point as a young person that you don't have the intelligence. So you actually kind of settle into that feeling of being, I guess, sometimes a little bit inferior. Now, I moved past that and I actually recognized it's about accepting you can't be good at everything. And that's like my mantra for life is I can't be good at everything. I do have certain talents. I have certain skills, but I am awful at some things. And to continue to try and push myself in things that just are not my space, it exposes other people to my failure in some ways. So I've always been very comfortable with accepting this isn't for me. I've also been always very comfortable making mistakes because sometimes, in order to try something new or go forward, you have to do that. But I think like owning that mistake and accepting it is probably one of the best things you can do because yes, you learn from it. Sometimes you learn that that's not your thing and you need to bring in other talent and you need to talk to other people and collaborate with other people. But for me, I just felt, I think like I have the confidence to know who I am. And I also have the confidence to say this isn't for me and not feel like it's the worst thing in the world. And I just said to I looked around and I'm surrounded by a lot of entrepreneurs and they love it. They love it. It's like, it is just like they get a high from it. And I wasn't getting a high from it. I was getting a stomach ulcer from it. And I said to myself, that's not really, Sarah, that's not good for you and it's not good for other people. You need to make another decision in your life. Because I've always made decisions in my life where I'm like, is this going to make me happy long term? Is this like good for me and the people around me? Am I going to be like a negative Nelly? And do I need to, reassess what I'm doing? So it was with that really that I just said, no, this isn't for me. And I'm very comfortable in saying that.
Well, you're definitely not a negative Nelly, Anya, just to clarify that. But also, my mantra is be the best you can be. So every day, be the best you can be. And that recognizes you can't be good. Like your mantra, you can't be good at everything. But whatever you're doing, just be the best you can be at whatever you're doing in that sense. So you joined HubSpot. So tell me a little bit about HubSpot and your journey so far to date in HubSpot.
Yeah, so I didn't know anything about HubSpot before I joined them. So how I kind of ended up kind of going on this journey was, as life, is full of like different twists and turns. I was actually on maternity leave, Tim, from our first son, and someone had asked me to speak at a panel around parents in tech, and I said, well, I don't work in tech. And I've only been a parent 5 seconds and I haven't even gone back to work yet. So I don't know I'd add anything here. But, she said, oh, no, please, we'd like your perspective. So I went along and walked into the and I didn't know HubSpot. And I tell HubSpot this, I didn't know them. And I did the panel, and there was a lady on the panel talking from HubSpot who I was like, wow, this lady is very, very interesting, very clever. I really like, what she's talking about. And after that panel, I reached out to her, a couple of weeks later, and I said, listen, I'd love to have a coffee with you. And I just love to chat through, and at the time, I didn't actually know what HubSpot did. So I wasn't actually interested in working on HubSpot. I just was interested in her perspective in terms of career development and career growth. And speaking to someone who didn't know me and didn't have any perspective on where I'd been. So I met her for a coffee. And at the end of it, she said, you could probably work in HubSpot, if you apply, obviously, and go through the process. So I did apply for a job then a little bit later after that. And that's how I ended up in HubSpot. HubSpot is a SaaS company that has its heritage in Marketing Hub. So marketing automation, that's probably what it's best known for. But it's evolved way beyond that now. So we have several different products, working with Service Hub and Sales Hub, and CMS Hub is our latest one. So we're really, really growing and expanding. And I think HubSpot in Dublin, the brand has really gone through the roof. We have a beautiful new building there on the Quays, which a lot of people have become more aware of. And there's definitely increased interest in HubSpot now as a brand. It's an incredible company. I mean, right from the top to the bottom, it's an incredible company and run by, two incredible people in Dermesh and Brian, the co-founders, who, have a very clear vision, not just in terms of the product, but also in terms of the type of company they want to have. They always say that they want a company that their grandkids will be proud of. And, for me, it's a company that, a lot of companies talk about their culture on the outside and they talk about oh, we're great and we do this and we do that. And then sometimes the reality, it doesn't exactly match it. But I can honestly say with HubSpot, it does what it says in the tin. I've been very impressed with the connection with the external point of view, with the internal point of view. And it's just a company of, tremendous talent and experimentation, exploration, creation, all those things, but very much focused around the customer. So I don't think I've ever worked in a company where it's all about customer. Our focus is 100% on our customer and solving for our customers and their needs. It's just I've been there almost 2 years now, and it's just continued to impress me the entire time I've been there.
It's great to hear about that. The culture is doing what it says in the tin. I talk to people all the time and I say, you must not just talk the talk, but you must actually walk the talk. And that's what separates, in my view, great companies than other companies, because a lot of people talk the talk, but ultimately when they come under pressure, you talk about customer service, and that's the center of your business. Whether you're under pressure, whether it's going well or not going well, you keep focused on that. And then the pandemic happened at the start of this year, and you just gave a beautiful building on the Quays. And that caused changes, not necessarily for you, because you mentioned early on in our chat that, the pandemic didn't have as much of an impact on your working environment as it would have in others. How did you react, and how did you react, and the management react at the point in time of the pandemic? What was your first reaction and the early stages of it?
Well, I think the thing that, I recall from, I think it was around March 12th or something, I'm trying to think back, that the communication was absolutely crystal from the company from day one in terms of what was going to happen and what everyone was going to do. We headed home for those 2 weeks, or we thought a few weeks at the time. And again, everyone was equipped to work from home. So it wasn't too much of a stretch. I think then, as the weeks went on with different, obviously, roles within HubSpot, people were, had different technical needs where they're I need a second screen or whatever it was. So, HubSpot accommodated all those things and get everyone set up to go. And I think, it's kind of, for me, been a year that's been divided in two. So, in the early stages of the pandemic, people were hopeful. I remember we used to be we'll be back in the office by July, this will be fine. Then when the reality started to set in, that wasn't going to happen. There was a little bit of grieving, I think, for, the colleagues, as in, oh God, this is we're all virtual and this is hard. And, how are we going to do this? We don't see each other anymore. And that's hard. But then, the company really started to, I think, listen to people around that and say, okay, we need to kind of prepare for the long term. Like, we can't just focus on that this is a short-term thing and everything will go back to the way it was before this. Because actually, for a lot of people, the change in the pandemic has been a positive thing in terms of their work-life balance or home life. Not for everyone, in the sense that when I think of my poor American colleagues, they are still homeschooling, some of them, because depending on what part they're in, the schools are not open. So they've really had to struggle with that. I mean, for us in the early days of the pandemic, my wife was on maternity leave with our second son at the start of it. So she was able to mind the kids when the creches shut down. And that was obviously a huge help for me. And then when she went back to work, we had to start going, I would work to 10 o'clock at night and totally work an American day, and she'd be working the morning time. But then I was getting up at 6:30 with the kids, and there was no time for anything else in between. So we just really struggled with that. And in the end, we had to kind of really take a serious think about it and find an alternative accommodation to that. But for families who couldn't, the working environment was just incredibly flexible. And I think it's a time we look back and really like with fondness, because the amount of children that I saw on Zoom calls and took part in Zoom calls, and the fact that we got to know each other's families and connect with each other, we became more accommodating of, I'm having a bit of a mare here with this situation. Can we move the meeting? People just were incredibly empathetic to each other and just really started to understand that. But I think the other thing that emerged over time was the real pressure this has put on mental health. And, everyone, people who had not historically suffered with it really started to feel isolated and started to kind of go, can I make this through this? And while at the start, there was this great article that actually some of the leadership in HubSpot published around toxic positivity. And we were saying that, you can't continue to tell your team day in, day out, it's all going to be fine. It's going to be fine. Let's all be positive. Let's get through this together. There's days that you have to go, this is crap. And this is hard. And I'm lonely. I'm upset. I'm feeling down. I'm feeling overwhelmed. So we kind of leaned into that as well in the middle part and said, okay, let's have it out. Let's have a conversation where, we talked about what's the first thing we're going to do when the pandemic is over? What do we miss most? So we really had open conversations around that.
Okay.
But the other thing that happened this year that had a huge impact on us was all of the, social injustice in the world, particularly in HubSpot being an American company. And initially, I think that's what we kind of said to ourselves, right? This is like an American problem. It doesn't impact the rest of us. But it started to get us all to reflect, even from an EMEA point of view, where do we need to improve? What do we need to do? And again, the company was there to answer that call and to really help and support the staff. So, HubSpot came out really strongly and said, we are an anti-racism company. And that just created a huge sense of pride amongst employees, really gave them a lift in terms of this is who we are. And then we did anti-racism training, which was just incredible. We did it with, it was such good training. People did it with their families, with their kids. It really brought it to life. And again, it just showed, I think, that for HubSpot employees, that HubSpot cares, not just about, the work that you're doing, but the world and, the community you come from. So for me, I think that was, that gave us a high point. And then I think we've moved into a bit of an acceptance period. And the company is really saying, we're never going to go back to the way we were. We're going to continue to look at the future of work. In the future, some of us will continue to be remote. Some of us will be in the office, and some of us will have more flexible working arrangements. I, for one, Tim, will be a flexible worker in the future. And before the pandemic, I would have went to the office 5 days a week. I really was like, oh God, I don't think I work from home. I really enjoy getting energy from people. But the interesting thing as well is that in the middle of the pandemic, I got promoted, right? So before the pandemic, I was running a team in EMEA. But in July, I actually got promoted to this global director of professional services. And I think if that had happened at any other time, there would have been an expectation for me to travel to the States a lot, because 75% of my team is over there. But because of the pandemic and because we're building all these virtual relationships, it's given me the opportunity to build those relationships from a virtual point of view, and they're incredibly strong. It's not really impact. In some ways, it's given me more time to connect with people one-to-one and really help me to navigate that situation. I eventually, as I said to them, will come and see them at some point. But, that has really shown that, I suppose, the opportunity and also that leadership doesn't have to be in the office, that leadership can be a global thing. It can be a remote thing. So, we're hiring more and more managers that are remote. We're hiring more and more employees that are remote. And all that's doing is like opening up this incredible, breadth of experience and talent that when you focus on geographical locations, you just don't get. But when you start to go beyond that, the talent that I have seen in the last couple of months since we started to think more remotely has just been incredible.
It's interesting you talk about toxic positivity, and it reminds me, I was doing a number of presentations to different businesses to support them through the pandemic. And I talked about 5 compartments that is normal in our life in February. So we got up in the morning, we had a shower, we had breakfast, we had our family time. So we call that one compartment. Then we headed off to work and we had the morning walk, which is a second compartment. We had lunch, we met our friends or we met our colleagues or we were on our own, our third compartment. The fourth was the afternoon walk and the journey home. And the fifth was the evening, whatever we did in the evening at home or in gymnasiums or whatever. The pandemic hit, we then had one compartment. We got up in the morning, we never left the house, okay? All the things that we took for granted were all, and that caused a huge amount of challenges, not just mental health challenges, it caused a huge amount of stress for people where, it caused people real difficulties in the fact that the social interaction was gone. The things they took for granted, chatting to their buddies about silly things, were all taken away. And when I talk to companies, you made a point at the start of HubSpot's pandemic challenge that communication was right on. But I've challenged companies to say, what about engagement? And you then went on to say later on, there was a pivot point, as I would describe it, in the journey of the pandemic, where you talked about this is crap. And I would have said to people early on in the pandemic, have a care call every day. Talk to people and find out not how they're doing at work, how they're doing. And you mentioned the word care. And that really was a big switch, I would say, in the HubSpot journey. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think at an individual level, all of the managers, we were, that was happening earlier on in terms of the care. And I think, again, if there's one word I would definitely associate with HubSpot, it's care in general. Like they're just, during the pandemic, they were doing kids club every day on Zoom where you could log on and there was different things happening for 2 hours a day to entertain your kids. Like they did incredible things like that. They really understood actually some of the parents, the challenges the parents were having.
Good.
And they were offering practical help, which I think is like key as well. But I think you're right in that. I think it's interesting. I think we need to continue to remind ourselves on that care piece, because there's a risk as we go further on that people just become like, oh, this is the normal now and it's grand and I'm kind of doing okay. So I presume everyone else is kind of doing okay. And that's not the reality. I mean, a lot of people I personally am someone who needs connection with my friends. And as much as we joke about the Zoom quizzes and everything that happened in the early days of the pandemic, I'm having one this Saturday with my friends because, I want to connect with them and I want to spend time with them. I have not seen my family in months because they're in a different county, nor has my wife because they're in a different county. So the kids have had to get used to FaceTime and those relationships. And I'm sure it'll be a time we'll look back and laugh about. But, it's the risk of it becoming like absolutely normalized and us not continuing to check in with each other, I think is the risk. But we were only talking about that this week, saying that is everyone continuing to check in and having just normal conversations? And my manager was saying yesterday that, I've talked about a lot of Netflix. So they were getting nominated for knowing a lot about Netflix. So I think that's the constant reminder, like continue to care and continue to reach out to people on a human level.
I think sustaining that effort is going to be very important. One of the things that is fascinating for me, and congrats on the promotion, obviously, to the global director position, is that you're now managing a team in the future remotely. The pandemic has forced people to manage a team remotely, but you're now going to be managing a team remotely in the future. What are the challenges you're going to face now as we come out in a post-pandemic world? Because, the vaccines are obviously, out there now at this point in time, and they'll start to, spread throughout the communities over the next period of time. What are the challenges for you now in managing a remote team, with a very significant global organization, that those challenges are presented for you?
Well, I mean, the big challenge for me is I'm actually embarking on quite a lot of change. So I've come into this role and I want to make change. And again, the great thing about HubSpot is the support is there for the change. So I'm making significant changes next year. So like the big challenge there is trying to coordinate all that change, right? And making sure that communication is right, and that you can make those changes and collaborate with people in different areas. And that's something, honestly, I'm still navigating through, because it is a lot. But I have learned that like good project management and good communication is like key to that. So people understand and go on that journey with you. I think like on a personal level, the challenge for me is there's not enough hours in the day in this time zone. So I actually feel incredibly lucky that in the morning, I have a team here in EMEA as well. But I feel in the morning I have more time. So I do more of like my, kind of like things I need to get done. And so that really helps balance my life. In the evenings, then I do a lot more, meetings and calls and things like that. But one thing that's really helped me, Tim, actually, and this is how accommodating and empathetic my team are. I was very honest at the start, and I said, I'm not the best reader in the world. Like, so if you send me the world's longest email, it's probably going to take me some time to facilitate the reading of that. And so what they do is they send me videos. They will send me these videos going, I just want to catch you up on this, or I want to tell you what's happening here. So they're actually incredibly accommodating to my particular needs, which is great. That also helps though, right? Because you're connecting with people, even if you see them on video, you kind of know who they are, and, you understand the nuances of, their personality a bit as well. So I've loved that. But the challenge for me is going to be the time, and balancing all of that in terms of the time difference. It's coordinating, huge change on a global scale. But the thing I do there is lean into giving my senior managers more autonomy, giving them like the autonomy to move forward with things, having good cadence of catch up and all being on the same page, having that kind of open relationship where they can ask questions, and we can run things by and make sure that we're all still aligned. So I think that's important. And, having constant team meetings and updates, again, at a global scale. I think the collaboration, which is interesting when you're in, EMEA versus NAM versus APAC. APAC, we can kind of cross over with in the morning, and then we cross over. So I'm able to connect with my APAC colleagues in the morning, their evening. And then with, NAM, there's obviously a much larger crossover. So for me, it's just about kind of making sure that the meetings you have are, as jam-packed as they can be with, content and decision-making, and then really good communication so everyone knows what's going on.
The series is called The Mindset Shift. And do you feel that your mindset has moved anyway along during the pandemic? Because obviously you've got promoted along the way. So, has it evolved? Has it adjusted? Has it changed? Or is it just consistent?
No, it's definitely changed. It's changed for myself, and it's changed for the way I look at my team. And it's changed in terms of what I thought was important, Tim, really, like on a personal level. For me, like one of the big things for me that's been a huge impact is that I do a lot of work in Kenya, and I hugely rely on fundraising and the events that get people in a room close together to raise money.
Yes. And
that's all been cut off this year, which has been really difficult to kind of like look at how we navigate that situation. But what's good is that, the mindset shift changes around, like we do, like the Army example. Now we have to think outside the box about how we do things. And so that's a journey I've gone in, is like changing away from those traditional fundraising I would have done, or traditionally the way we would have got that kind of funding. So we've changed that. I've changed the way I manage teams, because, I was before the pandemic managing people in person for the most part. I was having one-to-ones with them. You're able to read body language, you're able to understand. Now I think in the virtual world, you have to dig a bit deeper. You have to spend a bit more time. You have to ask more questions to really like get, the information you need in terms of how the person is doing. So I think that's important. I think communication mindset has changed as well. It's no longer like the easy way out, having a team meeting. I think like you have to communicate a message, communicate it again, make sure everyone's on the same page, make sure people aren't left out because they weren't on the call that day. It's harder to know who wasn't there because of that virtual world. So you have to work harder, for sure. Like on a personal level, my mindset has shifted into, you don't always need to be like sitting beside a person to like build a good relationship, or you don't always need to be sitting beside a person to like work on a project. I think that's like one of the kind of like myths you hear a lot, is a team can't be remote when they're working on a project. They need to be together, but that's just not true. We're running big projects at the minute, and not one person's in the same location. They're all over the States and they're all over the world, and they're still managing to deliver on projects. So just moving away from, I suppose, the physicality of teams into more leaning into what they can achieve together and putting better frameworks in place for them to collaborate in a virtual world and how to plan, I think is important.
Well, Sarah, it's been an absolute pleasure for me. For somebody who started out their journey in an academic world with a reading difficulty that has continued, and your team has recognized the challenges of that through your communication and have responded in a very positive way. For somebody who had a list of C's, as I say, and her photo said consistency, your career has been fascinating to date. I've no doubt it'll be much more successful. You've brought so much to the mindset shift this morning, and I really thank you for taking the time to join us.
Thanks for having me, Tim.
Thank you for watching The Mindset Shift. For more episodes, check out www.talenthub.ie/The Mindset Shift.